Just introduce yourself and also answer this one question. What do you think are the most important solutions at the state level to address sea level rise and flooding? You're on your way.
So thank you to all the organizations that collaborated to put on this incredible event. I really appreciate the work that you put in to continue this important conversation. My name is Andrew Dolberg. I'm running for the State House in District 98. That district encompasses Plantation, Davie, and Sunrise. I decided to get into the race because I've watched as our legislature has attacked a lot of the policies that we really need to create a sustainable future. My passion is in education. I work in the education space, teaching students about public speaking, debate, media literacy, all the skills that they need to become better critical thinkers in the 21st century. And as the legislature decided to reduce education spending, I realized that this was the one thing that was chipping away at opportunity for everybody in the state. And that's originally why I decided to get in. But the same premise of attacking opportunity applies to the way that the state has handled environmental sustainability up to this point as well. From the state level, there is not one singular thing that we can do to actually mitigate the effects of climate change. Instead, it has to be a partnership between the federal level, the state level, and the local level, which is why it's so important that this event has been set up in the way it is with candidates from all the different levels. From the state level, what we need to do is create infrastructure funding to help localities improve their stormwater infrastructure, make sure that they have drainage systems that are able to actually handle all of the water that's either coming from sea rise, from saltwater intrusion, or from rainwater. We have to allow them to install pumping systems to get the water out of high capacity areas and make sure that neighborhoods are not affected by flooding on their streets. We also have to make sure that we are directly addressing what's happening to the Everglades on our west coast. If we continue to allow saltwater intrusion to affect the freshwater aquifer and the Everglades, we are not going to have a clean source of drinking water for our own personal needs, nor for our farming needs, nor for anything else that the state needs. And that's why we have to work together with all three of those levels of government to, one, as I mentioned, create the infrastructure spending, but also look for long-term solutions. We need to talk about sustainability, not just adaptability, making sure that we simultaneously mitigate the effects of the problem while preventing the problem from getting worse in the future.
Well done. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Mike Gottlieb, and I'm running for State House in District 98. And the first part of the question was, why am I running? I was born and raised in Broward County. I'm a local criminal defense lawyer. I fight every day for people's rights and people's liberties. I got fed up this year after 25 years in practice as a lawyer when I saw some of the things that I thought were going wrong in our society. I was unhappy with the Guardian bill. So I didn't think it was appropriate when our teachers aren't paid enough that we're putting $67 million, I believe is the funding for that bill, to put guns in teachers' hands. I think that teachers should teach, teachers should nourish, and law enforcement should be who's protecting us in society, and I thought our priorities were wrong. I have young children, they go to school, and I just felt like it's time for me to give back in a different way. I've been giving back through charitable organizations with my wife for the past 18 years. And I said, now's the time. My children are of the age where I can get involved. I have a lot of endorsements. I'm proud today to say that I was endorsed by the Broward Democratic Environmental Caucus. And the reason for that is I think that I have the right attitude towards our environment. And I think that the environment should be treated like our bodies. You have one body, you have to take care of it. We have one environment, one earth, you have to take care of it. The question was, I think, what can we do on the state level to help the rising seas? Now, we know that it's a global solution, but on the state level, there are things that we can do. We need to get funding here in Broward County, okay, so that we can improve our infrastructure. We can follow the lead of what's been done in Dade County where they're raising their streets, okay? They're raising their streets to combat the rising sea levels. And we know from science that the sea is rising. We can look at the levels that the sea has risen over the past couple of years. You can look at your property, and even on a light rain, you know and understand that the water is higher. We know that the water is higher when we have storm surges from hurricanes. So in Miami-Dade County, they're raising the street levels in one way to improve the infrastructure to deal with the water intrusion, and then they're pumping it back out. We need to be concerned with the water that's coming from Lake Okeechobee and deal with the algae issues as well. But it's an infrastructure problem that we're having. We need to continue digging wells as a short-term solution, and we need to worry about the intrusion of water from septic systems. So that's what I propose. My name is Mike Gottlieb, and I'm running for State House District 98. Thank you.
Next.
My name is Elaine. My name is Elaine Geller, and I apologize if you can't hear me. I lost my voice a little bit. I'm running also for State House District 98. I've spent the last 30 years working to protect and defend women, children, the environment, along with making sure that we continue to do the right thing for our future. And I think that also really works hand in hand with what we need to do with the sea rise level issues. We know by 2060 we're going to be looking at many feet. So we need to not only raise our streets up, but work on the infrastructure levels to begin to look at seawall issues and how we can work with that to make it more natural, maybe perhaps working with more mangroves and putting that back into the system. So I think there's a lot of ideas that we can use going forward, but I think the biggest reason I'm running is to make sure that we go up to Tallahassee so that we can get it accomplished. Beating people up or screaming and pounding our fists in frustration is not going to get it accomplished. What we have to do is go up to Tallahassee, work across the aisle with other legislators that also live in areas that are being as disrupted as we are. Pinellas County, the Panhandle, those are the areas also that are being affected by these issues. We can work together in small increments to make things happen so that we can go forward and get some more funding to continue giving to the South Florida Regional Climate Compact, because I think that's really going forward. I've accomplished a lot. I guess I'm probably, do I still have time? Oh, I'm out of time?
Okay, next.
Hi, how's everyone doing? My name is Stephan Korka. I am 37 years old and a small business owner, and I'm happy to be here talking about this important issue. The question is how do we tackle sea level rise at a state level? And to do that, we must recognize that sea level rise is a direct result of climate change and global warming. So the real question is how do we tackle that? And at the state level, my solution goes beyond that. It's local, state, federal, global. The first thing we need to do is change the rhetoric that is being told by the deniers out there. We need to retrain and preach that this is a reality. This is actually happening. This isn't about conservative or liberals or Democrats, Republicans. This is something that's happening to us, and through education, and not politics, just facts, we need to retrain the general public and let those deniers know that this is real. Second of all, we need to change consumer habits. So how do we change consumer habits? How we consume, whether it be fuel, whether it be the food we eat, or the plastics we use. The best way to do that, in my opinion, is through a carbon tax. A lot of people don't want to use the word tax, but if you speak or listen to many economists out there, that actually is probably the smartest and quickest solution to curb climate change. It's not going to fully fix it, but it is going to curb the issue. And what do we do with that money? There are multiple things you can do. If the federal government has the guts to go off and actually do it, they could lower our income tax so we see a bigger return in our paychecks. But if the federal government can't come to the table and do the right thing and do that, at the state level we can do that and do something like issue dividends back to the citizens or invest the money made from the carbon tax in green initiatives and infrastructure at the local levels and counties. Now again, I understand no one likes tax, but carbon tax is the best solution to really tackle climate change, which will help our rising seas. But more importantly, we have to realize that as a state, it's bigger than us. It's bigger than the United States. It's a global issue. But hopefully, we can set an example, similar to what California does as well, and other states will follow, because I believe that the U.S. is the leader in how we tackle climate change. The rest of the world will follow. And it's time to be proactive and do the right thing for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I applaud the fact that you have come out on this night to listen to us candidates. My name is Daniel Stallone. I'm running for District 98. I've got a background in geology that started me off on my professional career. I studied glaciation. I studied the ice ages. I know that the natural processes of the earth are affecting both the climate change, the sea level rise, and all of those environmental factors that we are facing today. It's not necessarily glaciation, but it's the changes in temperature. And I've been preaching that we should have a carbon footprint tax. I was amazed today to see that there's a Republican from Miami that's offering the same in Congress right now. My idea with the carbon footprint tax is that we tax those businesses, industries, etc., that are creating the most CO2 emissions, which are affecting the greenhouse effect, which are creating the greenhouse effect. We could offer them the possibility of either paying a tax or implementing changes to their infrastructure that will help. Speaking of infrastructure, we have the South Florida Water Management District and all of the Central Broward Water Control District, South Florida Water Control Districts, which came as a result of flooding back in the 30s. They've helped up to now. They need to be enhanced. We need to dig deeper canals. What happens is that when the western areas of Broward County get flooded, they have to pump the water east. So now if they don't have pump stations that are capable of moving that water, it doesn't pump. So when we look at the holistic model and how do we address sea level rise, we look at 1,350 miles of coast in Florida. Florida is an environmentally sensitive state, one of the most in the country, because the Everglades are here in Florida. There aren't many other environmental resources such as the Everglades, which we almost entirely rely upon for our drinking water. So when we speak of environmental changes, when we speak about climate changes, we have to look at it holistically. And number one, the reason why I applaud the presence of all of the folks that came out today is because we need to enhance awareness. Whether there are disbelievers or not out there, we need to push the fact that this is affecting Florida and that in the coming decades, it's going to get worse and worse. I live in Davie. We have a good rain. I've got 4 inches to plod through to get to my car. It's not fun. So,
There we go. All right, we got this council. That was exciting. Exciting
That's
kicker
work.
to that series of questions. All right. So Andrew, back to you. All right, second question. According to actually one of our hosts here, it's called Flood IQ data. In the year 2032, sea level rise plus a hurricane category 3 would cause flooding-related damage to 25,000 homes in Broward County. What can we do now to protect these areas? 1 minute, okay?
So I think a lot of that question is very related to the infrastructure projects that we need. And so I'd like to talk about how we're going to get it done. With a lot of Republicans that are in the state legislature right now, they either feign that they don't believe in climate change, and the facts are plainly out there, or they push back on any effort to actually fight climate change in order to stick with that same narrative. So the argument that we have to make is an economic one and a human impact one. And we have to talk with Republicans and convince them based on the economic impact of all that hurricane damage and what it will do to the state. We have to talk about what it will do to their constituents. It will put them out of their homes. It will flood their streets. It will destroy their property. And make that argument as a way to pass legislation that will create comprehensive reform in the preparation we have for hurricanes. We also, in reaction to hurricanes, have to make it easier for people to recoup their costs and make it harder for insurance companies to dodge around repaying homeowners when they have to do repairs to their property. So there's a lot of different policy options that we have in order to prevent the hurricane damage and also make it easier to make those repairs after hurricane damage is inevitably been done.
Michael?
Would you mind repeating the question, please?
It was, according to Flood IQ, in the year 2032, sea level rise plus a Category 3 hurricane would cause flooding-related damage to 25,000 homes in Broward County. What can we do now to protect those areas then?
Okay, thank you, that's what I thought. So obviously, what the question is asking is, what can we do now to mitigate the damage in the future? Some of the things that we're talking about, some of the things we're doing, as I said before, we can build wells. We need to start, if you look at the Florida Keys, we can learn from them. They build their homes on stilts so that they can avoid the rising water and the water damage. We need to start putting our air conditioner units, HVAC units, anything that's outside, raise them up. The whole idea of the question was, what can we do to mitigate the damage in the future for what's coming? Because what we can, the sea level rise is happening. If we don't work globally as a community to reduce it, we're going to have to deal with it. So we have to start to find ways to mitigate that because it costs, we take FEMA money to deal with it. We should be asking for FEMA money now because it costs less money to deal with curbing those issues than it does to deal with them after the fact. So we've got to start to find effective ways to get rid, to build seawalls, effective seawalls to keep the water from intruding inland. And my time is up.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Geller.
Thank you. So in '09, 4 counties came together, Monroe, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, to create a unit to begin to work on these issues. And what they were able to do is begin the mapping of where we were going to see the most sea rise issues, where we would see most of the flooding issues. And a lot of the cities in the counties have begun doing some very serious, good, solid work. What we need to do is create a better opportunity with the legislature going forward so that we can continue to fund these really important works. We need to make sure that our western cities like Sunrise don't continue to flood during non-event flood days. Closing Sawgrass Mills for 3 days in 2017 because of a rain event should never happen.
Okay.
Of course, today, what can we do to tackle this? We need to continue to invest in the infrastructure, in seawalls, and going to low-level areas, and like someone's mentioned, raise the roads or foundations if we can do that. But in addition to that, we also need to do a better job at conserving our water and our aquifer, because the water in our aquifers does help fight against the sea level rise as well. So a way to do that is to initiate legislation to tackle water consumption. We spend so much of our water on watering lawns. We should allow residents to use fake lawns like Nevada and California does, and by doing that, by protecting our water supply and not using so much of it, it will be a natural barrier to help against the sea level rise, in addition to the man-made things we are doing, such as sea walls and raising the roads where applicable.
The immediacy of this problem is one that has to be addressed at all levels of government. The fact is, we don't have decades to wait to correct what we've already bent out of shape. Look at what the Army Corps of Engineers did to the Kissimmee River. We cannot make mistakes. This is urgent and immediate. The bottom line is, again, with awareness, our legislators, whether they're one of us or any of the other hundreds that represent all the people, need to establish the fact that we have to work in a concerted effort with the federal monies that need to come down and help to use the infrastructure we have. It's fine to change the building codes, to raise the levels of streets and so forth, but the agencies that exist with responsibilities now have to be enhanced. If we need bigger lift stations, let's get them. If we need to dig deeper canals. But getting to the root of the problem, just like ecology in the 70s helped us against pollution, we need to now address the issues that are relevant to all of us.
Okay. Andrew, back to you again. What role should the state education system play in educating on sea level rise? Is there an education program you would champion?
So, as with most political issues and the way that we discuss them, it all starts with the way that we are brought up talking about those issues. Older generations might remember that climate change was not taught as part of a major science program, and so that generation grew up, and a lot of them did not really get involved with the environmental issues that we now face as an immediate threat. Younger generations have had climate change more kind of entrenched in that education system. And what we see is that millennials are more involved in environmental issues, more interested in tackling environmental issues than most generations that have come before them. So what we really need to do is start building that more into the education system. We need to make sure that starting in elementary school, students understand what the world is going to look like, what the environmental outlook is. If we train students in a way that has them understand the problem from a very young age, the solutions that they're going to come up with as they get older are going to make anything that we are able to do pale in comparison to the actual advances that they're able to make.
Michael?
Of course, I think we need to educate our children. I already participate with my children at Treetops Park. I can't think of the name of the program where they do the water conservation days and all the different programs throughout Broward County come out, and we educate people on the proper products to put in toilets, so on and so forth, in terms of flushing and what we're doing to our water systems and poisoning them. It begins at home, and as I said before in my opening statement, we only have one Earth. We need to take care of it, and we need to educate the children that science is real, because unfortunately, some people grow up and they don't believe that science is real. So we have to start in the education system, letting the children know that we have one environment and we have to take care of it. And we already do too much to destroy it, and we need to let that be known in terms of the footprint that we're leaving. We need to let them know that we have sustainable energy solutions, such as solar energy. We live in the Sunshine State, and we don't give proper incentives for solar energy. Time's up again, sorry.
So, the problem, the magnitude of the problem is so significant that we, of course, are teaching our children in the schools climate change science for the most part in the public schools, as Andrew kind of discussed. I remember even my daughter going to school and coming home with those issues, working with Commissioner Bean Firm, along with Broward County, along the waterways, cleaning up the beaches over the years. We need to continue to do that. We must make sure that our children have the educational programs that they can get involved with, programs that can combine private and public so that they can come out with the skill set so that they can work on these exact issues. Because the education is just the first part, having them come out of school, understanding and knowing the needs, and being able to have the skill sets to be able to provide fixes that we need going forward. Thank you.
You know, when I was in elementary school, I lived in Davie, and Davie rolled out their recycling program. And this was in the 80s, and it was a fairly new idea in the city. And I remember seeing news clippings about it, and it became a really big deal to me and my other classmates. And I think this is the new recycling program for our children. It's very important that we talk about climate change, that we talk about water conservation, that we just talk about plastic contamination. There's many issues that affect our environment and our planet that are going to affect our children and our children's children, and it needs to be a part of the curriculum in all the science classes. I don't know what the curriculum is currently, but if fourth grade is still all about teaching us about Florida, you know, in addition to taking a trip up to the Springs, we also need to learn heavily about the effects of what carbon and human consumption has been doing to our planet, and what we can do to be better people in the future.
I think education is a big part of it, but not only do we have to educate our children, we have to educate our leaders. The United States hasn't even signed into the Kyoto protocols. We need to change the perspective of the leaders at the federal level, because that's where the money will trickle down to us here. Yes, we can educate our children, and we must, but their lifestyles are already changing. They're already taking on assets and changing resources in the way they look at life. Vegetarianism, animal rights. There's so many things that the young people are awakening to that we should have years ago. However, until we educate our politicians at the levels in which changes are really brought, nothing is going to change. And the biggest issue is sea level rising. And why is it rising? Because of all the carbon emissions. So we need to establish protocols that will control industry, not enhance coal burning and all of the others that negate our environmental steps forward.
Daniel, let's come back, starting with you first, since poor Andrew here was having to take each question without without the benefit of hearing everybody else's answer. So this is from the audience, Daniel, and it says, with our new coral reef conservation area from St. Lucie Inlet to Key Biscayne National Park, with 45 species of coral, many dying, and with our looming cutoff deadline of 2025 for ocean outfall, will you consider using Amendment 1 funds for advanced water treatment facilities?
I'm not an expert on coral, but I happened to be at the turtle station that NSU runs over on the beach in Hollywood the other night. And it was told to me that 95% of staghorn coral, which makes up much of the underwater environment of South Florida, has been destroyed already. 95%. They're going out there, they're growing coral just like they grow oysters. All right? It's a necessity to bring life back into those levels of the sea in which they thrive. So when we destroy things to that extent, we need triage. What's happening now is basically something that's going to take generations to bring back. That, in addition to sea level rise, we've got our work cut out for us.
It's no secret what's happening to our coral and our barrier reefs around the world, literally due to climate change. The Great Barrier Reef has been bleached, you know, over in the Gulf of Mexico as well, the reefs that are over there. And again, this all comes back to carbon and raising temperatures and what we need to do to fix that, to restore our reefs. And if it's even reversible, we don't know. We want to be optimistic about that, but we have to protect it at all costs. To answer your question, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm unfamiliar with Amendment 1 and those funds, but I will definitely research it and make an informed decision based on what that is. But I do think protecting our reefs is important, and the only way we can do that is by tackling climate change, which is why we are really all here.
Ms. Geller.
So in looking at using Amendment 1 funds, I really do like the idea. I think that if we could look towards using some of that funding, we may be able to sustain, remove some of that carbon footprint that we're looking at. I think that we could be able to be in a better position to work with the counties as we go forward. So I would be very much interested in looking at using Amendment 1 funds.
Michael.
Yeah, Amendment 1 relates to the homestead exemption. And the homestead exemption is obviously the ability to get additional tax money to us so that we can provide for projects such as this, where obviously we need to protect, as I said before, One Earth. We have this one coral reef. It's one of our greatest assets for tourism. Okay, it's one of our greatest assets for enjoying life, for being able to use it and respect it. So we have to develop funding from somewhere. We can't just keep taking money from our pockets. So Amendment 1 deals with the homestead exemption, and obviously the more money that we can get to deal with projects like this, the better off we are. So absolutely, I would be an advocate for using Amendment 1 funds to ensure that our coral reefs are sustained, that they thrive, that we can use them, enjoy them, use them for tourism, use them to build on Florida's economy so that we can sustain it. Thank you.
So the state legislature, unfortunately, has the habit of rating a lot of their trust funds that are set aside for specific purposes. Rather than just talking about Amendment 1, I think what we need to talk about is creating a rain-proof trust fund to fund environmental sustainability programs. What we really need to do is create a specific block of money that cannot be used for other purposes to make sure that we have access to the infrastructure projects that we really need. And if you look at the way that the legislature handles these funding problems, they handle all of the different trust funds, all of the different sources of revenue, as if they're just going into one giant stockpile to be used for any purpose. The only one thing they've made rain-proof is the trust fund for concealed carry weapons permits. That's the only thing the legislature can't touch for another purpose. And so what we need to do is protect the money that's going to be used for environmental sustainability by passing specific laws to protect that money and reserve it for a single purpose, making sure that we have a sustainable green future.
Okay, Daniel, the audience has another question here for you. It says at the state level, Much of the resistance to building resilience is political. What tools will you use to try to overcome political intransigence to design and fund solutions?
Conflict resolution, I learned it here at Nova. I'm going for my PhD in that. You have to meet on common ground. We have to remember that we're all Americans. This is one country. Our partisanship is separating us. We don't reach across the table. And that's a losing effort right there. We've heard of win-win solutions. We've heard of lose-lose. If we want to remain where we are, stagnant, not moving forward, then we keep up the old guard. If we want to change things, then we look to collaborate. And when we look to collaborate, we have to ensure that both sides and the people are going to benefit from that collaboration. The fact is that we may be outnumbered, Democrats to Republicans in Tallahassee, but people can meet on common ground. Maybe I'm an optimist, however, with the training that I have, I believe that I can go forward and reach out across the barrier that exists. And if that wall separates us, give me the sledgehammer that I've previously spoken about, and we'll knock that wall down. Because it's only with a concerted effort that we will achieve anything lasting.
Mr. Korka.
I've always been fair, objective, empathetic towards people and everything that I do. I think to really get things done, we really need to understand where everybody comes from, because everyone's opinion matters. And if we discredit anyone, that's when people stop listening. We can't be in this tug-of-war atmosphere that we're in, where it's us against them. We need to work together. We need to build relationships. And the best way to do that is to drop the rope and shake hands. And for those that don't want to play ball, for those that don't want to come to the table and do the right thing and have a conversation, then they need to be called out. And it is up to the legislatures to call them out. It's up to the voters to vote them out. And it's up to all of us to just hold everyone accountable, not just the legislature, but people in general need to be held accountable if they're doing the wrong thing. But first and foremost, we need to listen to everyone, be objective, empathetic, and understanding. If we can't do that, then nothing's going to get done.
So, the last 30 years or so, I've been spending my time as an activist, going to Tallahassee and Washington, D.C., working with both Democrats and Republicans alike on big issues and small. I've spent the last 3 years working to legalize medical marijuana and, by no short measure, working with the Republicans to get that passed. So sometimes we do need to reach across the aisle, and I understand that we're really running into an recalcitrant situation where, excuse me, I'm sorry, the governor of the last few years has banned the words climate change. But I do believe that there are areas that we can meet across the aisle and agree. Because you're going to have legislators, you have legislators from Tampa, from Pensacola, from Melbourne, who really are being affected by these issues in Jupiter, Naples. We certainly have the algae issues. So we can do things maybe starting off small in increments, but we can continue to create the funding required to protect Lake Okeechobee for our...
So the question was, what are the tools that I would use? The tools that I would use are the same tools that I've been using for 25 years. I would educate and advocate. I'm an advocate, okay? I told you before, I'm a lawyer. And the question is this: we have other people that don't agree that we have problems with our environment. We have people that are denying science. We have people that don't believe we have sea level rise, that we don't have holes in the atmosphere. So you need to be a strong, committed, passionate advocate, and you need to take the science that we have. You need to take the science that we have, and you need to prove to the people who are denying it, to the deniers, that we are suffering from our own ignorance. And the question was, what would I do? I would use my education, I would use my advocacy, as I have done every day for 25 years, to get the other side to agree. It's not going to work to just sit around and talk and try to work it out. We've tried that approach. It's not working. We have a president who backed out of the Paris Accord. We need to be strong, passionate advocates to get the job done.
So, while I do think that handling all these issues is about advocacy and education, I don't necessarily think that we're going to convince anybody that is voting against climate change measures and against environmental sustainability that they should care about our issue from our perspective. As I was talking about before, we need to make the economic argument. When we're talking about algae blooms and we're talking about legislation that needs to be passed, which has to be bipartisan in order for us to actually get it through the legislature, we have to convince the Republicans who are not just going to vote for funding to protect our environment that our tourism is going to plummet if these algae blooms continue to pollute our beaches. We have to convince people on the other side of the aisle that if they're not going to care about the environment for the sake of caring about the environment, they have to think about it because of its eventual impacts. But on a higher level than that, we also just have to vote people into office that care about the environment. We have to make sure that statewide we have programs in place, whether they're part of the government or not, to help people understand the importance of these issues and have them show up to the voting booth, because that's the only way we're going to create actual change.
Andrew, this is the last question for this group. So from the audience, clearly significant, and it's underlined, mitigation infrastructure will be needed. How would you propose it be paid for? You're talking about really billions of dollars here to sort of keep South Florida dry for a couple decades more.
Sure. So, unfortunately, in the state of Florida, the legislature and the governor, controlled by the Republican Party, continually decrease the amount of revenue that the state takes in period. This means that for future governors, future legislatures, it's going to be extremely tough to raise funds for any kind of new program. We need to change that. We need to create new sources of revenue to make sure that we have the ability to pass new programs in place that are going to make a true difference. I think that a lot of those programs, unfortunately, do need to be paid for by an income tax in the absolute top brackets. People need to be paying their fair share in order to create these programs. Otherwise, we're simply not going to have the money for it. We can't divert funds away from the other necessary social programs that we have in place, so we have to find new ways to raise that money. And in my opinion, doing so by taxing the corporations a certain percentage that they're going to be able to fund into this program, and also, like I said, taxing the absolute top bracket of income earners is going to be that solution.
When our governor turned down $5 billion a year for Medicaid expansion, that cost us over a period of 10 years, $50 billion as a state of Florida. I'd like to have that $50 billion right now to put towards mitigation efforts for our environment. So that's one of the ways we need to look. When we're given a handout by the federal government, okay, and a handout that 800,000 Floridians could have used, that we now have to take from other areas to fund, that doesn't make sense. So when we talk about common sense solutions, when we're given money or an opportunity and we can use it someplace else, that's one of the things that I would do. We can talk about taxes, but nobody wants to raise taxes. Nobody wants, it discourages tourism. We were given an opportunity from the federal government and we turned it down. We have to find other ways, incentives for solar energy that benefits the environment. Incentives for water conservation that benefits the environment. That's what we need to do. Thank you very much. My name is Mike Gottlieb.
So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. There's things that we've started to do. Perhaps we need to look at taxing plastic bags, taking them off and making stores not be able to use them. Perhaps tax that as well as other issues. These are really important as we go forward. We're going to have to work with our cities and our counties to be able to mitigate these major issues. We know by 2060 we're going to have 3 to 6 feet rise on our sea levels. We have to raise our roads. We must look to be able to protect our seas coming forward. We have to protect our water from saltwater intrusion. So we're going to have to look at some kind of opportunity, looking at Amendment 1 really maybe money that's already there that we can use. So that might be one of the avenues, again, looking to get rid of plastic bags or tax them so that we can create some kind of fund so we can protect ourselves going forward.
Stephen.
I said at the beginning, I'll say it again, the carbon tax. Before, again, just talk to an economist, go check out a podcast or something, do your research on it. It really doesn't affect the pockets of individuals as much as one may think. You're talking, you're talking maybe $350 annually to start that people would be paying per person to contribute to a carbon tax, and that money can be put back into green initiatives. And anybody will tell you in the economists feel that is the quickest and best solution to tackle what's happening. And more importantly, it will curb consumer habits, and consumers will naturally, just naturally curb themselves from consuming harmful carbon things that hurt the environment or other things, because they don't want to spend that much money through the carbon tax. Do your research on it. I promise you the carbon tax is the most logical, smart answer to get this done. Thank you.
Mr. Stallone.
I agree with Mr. Korka that the carbon footprint tax is something that needs to be implemented right away. We just came out of what I would call the mortgage depression, and as a result of that, we've had a lot of foreign investment in Florida. Florida is one of the best places in the world. I call it the American Riviera. For that foreign investment, there should be a charge. The fact is that if we live here and we're paying the taxes to ensure a certain lifestyle exists, and other foreign investors are taking over our own state, perhaps they should pay a little bit more in terms of what types of taxation. I like Mr. Dolberg's answer about a potential income tax. Florida's sensitivity to the environment is not something we can overlook. The bottom line is we need to act now. So all of these types of answers and these ideas need to be vetted and implemented as needed.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for the candidates for State House candidate. Good job, Steve. Very good. Okay.